This is Call of Duty 2. We're here on Xbox Series X, diving into the multiplayer. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. And yeah, it's going to be edge of your seat action, or as intense as 3-player competitive Call of Duty 2 action can get, which actually at times is a little wild. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to go back to this original offering of Call of Duty multiplayer on the Xbox. This was a very strong launch window title for the 360, and I've kind of wanted to do multiplayer for it, on it for a while, and we definitely do not have enough players in this game playing at any point of the day for us to do streams of it. So it's more like taking a look at the multiplayer and having some fun. I did get some bits of matches where it was 5 players, so there's lobbies, at least at the moment, throughout various times of the day, but nothing too substantial, if that makes sense. But it is kind of cool to come here and play this and get kind of a feel for an older Call of Duty experience, because I started with Call of Duty 3. I mean, I did try this one out, I did play it, but it's really fascinating that this one kind of sets the foundation for so many things that come later, especially like this basically was essential for the technology that eventually became Call of Duty 4, and then that blew up and made the series what it is today. Oh, the lighting in this game is intense too. The lighting is really, really crazy in this one. But yeah, it's got a lot of the icons and symbols, a lot of them seem to originate from this Call of Duty game. And then also so many game modes in their infancy. This one had headquarters and search and destroy, where you're actually blowing up tanks. It sounds weird because you're oh, you're just doing a few matches, but we'd have some 2-on-2s, and we were playing literally search and stuff. I was this is weird. And then we've got original versions of maps like Carrington's on this one, and then we also had the original version of Wasteland for Modern Warfare 2. I was I didn't know that map actually came from this game. It's a French level. I don't remember the name of it, but I was oh wow, that is literally that level. It's changed a bit for Wasteland, but you're oh wow, no, that's essentially it. So yeah, it was really cool to kind of jump into this one and get a feel for things. It's got set classes. Hilariously, I guess Call of Duty 3 was a big advancement coming after this with the ability to sprint. Because fundamentally 2 and 3 are so different, but 2 is kind of closer to 4 and onwards, which is kind of funny. But you can tell that Call of Duty's always had that kind of winning formula there. It just needed to be refined in the particular way that it did eventually get refined to become such a juggernaut that it is in the modern era, which is kind of fun. But it was really nice sitting here just messing around with a couple people. I've played some matches I didn't even really film, and it was just kind of had some fun going around shooting stuff. And then these two I kind of picked. There's this map, Tunisia, and then another one's I think somewhere in France, I believe. The other map is a little bit more tree and kind of more European focused, I would say, in setting, because this one's a lot more a desert-esque level, right? But it kind of works well. It's got some high ground points, and it's large enough that people move around, you don't run into them all the time. I'd love to see this full go with a filled lobby. I bet it was just wild. But it also feels like a very different type of multiplayer, particularly deathmatch and stuff, where it's just the scale of the maps, the flow of it. Because without sprinting, you're kind of just walking around. It's also kind of a funny thing with less players, is sometimes on this map you literally are just walking around trying to come across somebody being where are these people at? And it's got all the hiding stuff of COD, and then the preset classes. So it's there's the Axis and the Allies, and it's with the Axis here we've got the MP44, and there's the GWR, and classic weapons like that, and they'll have their own little slight class. I mean, it's the same, it's basically the same. They just get different quantities of frags or smokes and a different gun, and that's basically it. But it just gives you some choices. Do you want to be a sniper? Do you want to go out and just be more of an assault unit and use all those frag grenades? Totally up to you. And it mirrors on both sides, right? Like then the Allies, they've got like the Thompson, and they got I'm trying to think the bar and stuff like that to kind of match. So it is kind of interesting. I mean, for deathmatch, it doesn't really matter, but when you are kind of playing like competitively, like in teams, it's a very interesting change up. At least I feel so. But yeah, this multiplayer is kind of cool looking, and you know, like the maps, like the geometry and stuff is kind of interesting. It ages decently well because there's actually a lot of like the rooms are filled, and there's lots of like cover crates and stuff in the middle. See, there's the headshot icon, which you kind of know so well from like say Call of Duty 4, which is funny. But then you look at the backdrop, and it's like it is literally hilarious looking at the backdrop sometimes because it's like very, very light 2D geometry, and then like these very clearly painted sky boxes and stuff. But the sky box here is actually it's kind of lovely. It's a little simplistic, but it is actually still pretty lovely. And then the lighting with like the sun is done really interesting in like a harsh way to kind of shield parts of the map, and I think that's kind of cool. But yeah, it still sets like a pretty cool scene. Oh, it looks like I'm going for a bit of a weapon change up here, so you can see the different German weapons. The WWII, which I don't think I'm gonna do too well with, but yeah, and it's also like fluid too, which is nice. Like this must have felt pretty, I don't know if revolutionary is the word, but at the time this must have been a really fun competitive multiplayer game with lots of different modes and lots of content in it. It's actually kind of impressive, you know what I mean, for such like an early console type thing, because it was like really the beginning of the explosion of multiplayer competitive play. And then you compare this to just like a couple CODs afterwards, and the way everything's streamlined competitively is just wild, because like Treyarch went on their direction, and then because COD 4 was so popular, they were essentially dragged into this direction, and this direction's been the direction of the series ever since. And it's like you owe a lot, I guess you would say, to Call of Duty 2 in terms of like the tech and some of the stuff here. It's utterly fascinating to see some of the origins of certain things just by like playing the multiplayer here. You're like, oh wow, this is quite cool. And it is bare bones too, in the sense that you're not like you're not like leveling, you're not doing anything wild progressionally, you're just playing to have fun and just take out opponents. But it's got like the kill cams, it's got some really intensive combat where you die, I think, pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like oh man, I'm having a hard time with that staircase. A couple bullets will kill you. You get a good headshot, it's literally over. And, it's crazy and intensive, but it's also, like, balanced, and it feels pretty fair across the weapons. Like, there's a good selection of weapons, but they don't feel like any of them are too wildly strong. Like, depending on the map, snipers will be better, or close quarters weapons, or more, like, medium range, depending on the level that you're on. It's really quite neat. Although I have noticed that if you're hiding in the high ground, you really do have a bit of an advantage, because it's just like, it seems genuinely harder to kind of take people out, because the cover is so, like, you're not really vulnerable in the cover, except for like literally just a bit of your head. I think they've changed that a lot over the franchise history, but yeah, this one you are really shielded when you have that high ground advantage, as long as you're not like peeking over the edge or something like that of a spot, which I think is kind of entertaining. Try to get like that thing set up. And there's mounted guns, there's smoke, frag grenades, like I mentioned, little tools to like kill people, and you gotta be a little bit more dead on to get folks, because they're usually a little bit more spread out. And it's also a lot more like in-building cover and areas you go to in this one, I've noticed, across the different maps. It's just really quite a good selection of levels and places you kind of play in. But I wanted to show it off, because I was like, we haven't done multiplayer for this one, haven't been able to find multiplayer matches of it, so it's kind of cool to actually come in here and be like, oh yeah, we're playing, having a good time with it. And these other guys just seem to sit around for a while too, which is kind of nice, and it's just a little bit of nostalgia for a lot of them, and for me it's kind of a cool exploration into the history of Call of Duty. And with that, kind of Call of Duty 2, and I'll just kind of leave a non-commentary second half, so you can enjoy another map without hearing me if you just want to have fun there. But it's a pretty cool battle and pretty interesting. At least I think so. And yeah, cool squad here to play with.